Hi everyone, sorry about that technical little difficulty there. For some reason my camera wasn't appearing and so you couldn't see my face. I hope you're having a great day, evening, morning, whatever time zone it is when you watch this or if you're on live. Thanks to anyone who is joining, who has joined this. Say hello so I can see who you are. If you are, do try to look at the comment section later to see if any. I always tend to forget, so I'll try to remember to do that because there sometimes are questions there which I kind of don't answer because I forget to look. So here we go, we're back on to the Nag Hammadi scriptures. This is sort of the hiatus there for a couple of weeks because it took a long time to do this next chapter, which is the Tripartite Tractate, which is essentially the a treatise between three peoples, or a treatise split into three sections. I'm going to go through this. This is going to be part 1A. There are three parts to this tractate, and I'm going to be going through the part 1, but this is part 1A because this itself will take at least two videos to go through, because there is quite a lot of content to get through on the part 1 of the Tripartite Tractate. So we'll kick that off. If there's any problems hearing me, for those who are listening or seeing me, or any part of this, do let me know so I can make those corrections. And if the background noise is, music, is too loud, also let me know too. Okay, so let's move on to the presentation itself. So as I've mentioned, this is the Tripartite Tractate. I'm just going to bring up the PowerPoint on my screen here. And it's set into three parts. Just to go through the Nag Hammadi for those who just haven't first time have joined this this set of videos that I'm covering the Nag Hammadi scriptures. They're a set of early Christian and Gnostic codices which are found in a jar. Originally were thought to have been in the Temple of Alexander, which were then destroyed. These are found in the jar at the base of some cliffs, the Nag Hammadi, near Nag Hammadi in Egypt, circa 200 AD. Originally it was written in Greek, translated in Coptic, and then obviously in modern day translations to English text. The book that I'm reading is the Nag Hammadi Scriptures by Marvin Mayer, with some contributions from Elaine Pagels and James Robinson. It's a great book, very thick, lots of text if you're looking to read that. If you read the Bible, then it will be a similar kind of experience to that in terms of fine print and fine leaf. Okay, the Tripartite Tractate. There's no official title to this text. It was called the Tripartite Tractate because it was divided into three parts, and it was a discussion of those three parts, hence the tractate or treatise. The first part, which we're going through in two sections, in two videos, will be it deals with the Father, the Son, the emanation, the Pleroma, Fullness, which effectively is talking about Source itself, the divine, the Son being the eons or us, our spirit, the beings, that are the expressions of Source itself, of the divine grace, and the emanation, the Pleroma, Fullness, which is the spirit itself, but Pleroma is also the infiniteness of the universe of universes, if you like, the theatre of experience, and the fall of the youngest eon and the creation of the cosmos. What this refers to is, it talks to the very first expression of grace being an eon. We are all eons, i.e. divine infinite spirits, fractals and expressions of grace. But it talks about the first one, which was the first expression, the youngest eon, in other words, and I suppose the fall of that youngest eon and the creation of the cosmos as a result of the act of that first initial eon. This is up to interpretation for yourselves. Remember, this is a text. It doesn't mean it's gospel. But it has meaning in it, but it can be interpreted in many different ways. I don't necessarily agree with the fall of the youngest eon or even the creation of the youngest eon, actually. But we'll go through the texts and you can make your own mind up as to how you wish to interpret that, whether literal or otherwise. The second parts we'll go through with the narrates is the creation of the first human, the transgression, expulsion from paradise, and also again the nature of the cosmos, the advent of the Saviour, establishment of the church, and the fates of the various categories of humans. So there's a lot in this. The latter two are very short chapters actually, so we'll try to go through those in one video, part 2 and 3. So you won't have to wait too long to go through this. So let's go. Okay, so I've taken out a lot of extracts from each and every chapter that I read, and a lot of it is for my own benefit too, and it helps me get through the book, but it's good to share the interpretations of my own of these, but also the interpretations of the authors, and the contributors are actually excellent, and the footnotes are excellent. So if you are reading it, do read the footnotes. The first one is self-explanatory. It's I'll try to get this going for about 45 minutes at the most if I can, and then we'll cut that off, and I'll go live another time for the remainder of part 1. Okay, in order to be able to speak about exalted things, it is necessary that we begin with the Father, who is the root of the all, and from whom we have obtained grace to speak about him. Self-explanatory explanation there. This doesn't need to be explained. We are to speak about exalted things, speak about those expansive aspects of us, the divine itself, the all, the limitlessness, the infiniteness from which all stems, and the root of the all. And we all obtain grace to speak about him, from whom we have obtained grace. We all have grace, but obviously we are here to expand into those exalted things. It's self-explanatory, that statement. We won't go into it any further. The second extract was the subchapter from the Father. The Father is singular, whole being, many. Father is in fact like a tree that has a trunk, branches and fruit. He has not been born, the only Father and God in the true sense, therefore the one who has been born by no one. It does use he as a metaphor, as a figure of speech. There is no he or she. It's the divine is an it. It's formless and indescribable, immutable, incomprehensible, immeasurable. It's just an it. It's an isness that exists. The use of he is just a figure of speech to define. As a description. Back in the day, everything was he. Being born by no one, unchangeable in his eternal being, immutable, incorruptible, for no one has made him what he is. Thus he is called without beginning and without end, incomprehensible, inscrutable, invincible, and unfathomable. Unfathomable to our physical senses, this is what that means, but it's not unfathomable to our feeling and emotional inner selves, which is where we receive grace. That is where we can only touch, when in form, the emotion and connectedness of the divine. Moreover, he has no envy, which means that all he owns he gives away, without being affected and suffering no loss by his gifts. Finds rest in what he graciously bestows. Nothing else exists beside him from the beginning. There is no name that suits him, no mind can conceive, no word express, no eye see, and no body touch, form that can be perceived by the senses. So, which means that all he owns he gives away without being affected and suffering no loss by his gifts, finds rest in what he graciously bestows. Nothing else beside him from the beginning. There is no name that suits him, no mind can conceive. This is what this is interpreting to be, is that we are an expression of thought in the truest sense. As we talked about, we discussed the universal laws and what governs manifestation, and we discussed intention, thought, and energy. What the divine gives away is actually an fractal of itself. It doesn't give it away. We are just an expression of it. We are an encapsulation. Our core is an encapsulation of the divine in its entirety. And it's we are created by the intention of grace to create us. The intention inspires a thought, which then transmutes energy into a spirit, our divine spirit, which is infinite, because grace is infinite. We will be here as long as the all is here. The all is always here, because the all is the all. So therefore we are also without beginning. We are with beginning, because we are beginning with source, but we also are without end, because that would mean the end of the all also. But we are comprehensible, we are invincible, we are fathomable, we are corruptible, unlike source itself, which is given us all possibility. All possibilities in the divine realm. We are expressions of the divine realm, but we're also given, we are presented with the universe of all possibility, which allows us through free will to express any form or any action, word, thought within ourselves, and creating duality as a result. Okay, although he is unknowable in his nature, source grace is not him or her, as we mentioned before. If he so desires to grant knowledge in order that he may be known, I don't believe that knowledge is granted. We all have knowledge by virtue that we exist. We have knowledge by virtue that we have a spirit within ourselves animating the vessel in which, the avatar in which we occupy. It's our decision through free will to drive out the knowledge that's within us, through it, and which is called expansion, which is called enlightenment, which is called the movement towards grace, which ultimately leads us towards becoming the I am. In other words, the infinite spirit itself, and expressing that outwardly and becoming what it is that we seek and that we practice to become. So knowledge is within us from the beginning. It doesn't actually ever be granted. It's granted by virtue that we are infinite, and we have access and are infinite knowledge. We just have to make the choice and the decision to express and realize that knowledge of the divine that exists with all of us. He possesses power, which is his will. This is describing our free will too. We are a reflection of divine free will, for it is truly ineffable, or in other words, too great to be expressed. Self that he engenders, it is self-generation. He brings forth something worthy of admiration, glory, praise and honor that belongs to himself. He has the sun dwelling in him, keeping him silent about him. This is the ineffable within the ineffable, the invisible, the I, divine spirit, the I am. So what is the sun? He has the sun dwelling in him, keeping him silent about him. The sun is the spirit. So when we talk about eons within the Nag Hammadi, and we talk about the sun, for me, this is everything that is being expressed from the divine will of grace itself. So everything is an expression, a manifestation, or a sun. The sun dwelling in him is your spirit, keeping him silent about him. Well, that is a silence that we inflict on ourselves through this physical realm that we express, forces that upon us, and we'll touch on that in future videos. We won't go into it today, how that's imposed, and I think we all pretty much know how that's imposed, just merely by virtue of being in a physical body in a human realm, in a third dimensional duality in which we live. From the moment we're born, and before we're able to articulate our feelings, thoughts and emotions, we already have a suppression of the sun that dwells within us, i.e. the spirit. And then it becomes silent because it's suppressed. It's suppressed, it's pushed down by the dogmas of the world in which we enter, and also those that surround us. This is how he exists eternally within himself, by knowing himself in himself. The Father bore him without generation. This is what is truly meant by silence or wisdom or grace. So this is where it says that the divine exists eternally within himself. So it exists within us By knowing himself in himself, the Father bore him without generation. So in other words, we become to know the divine, and become to know ourselves, i.e. himself, in himself. Within him, in himself means with releasing our spirit from within ourselves, and to understand the Father, which is the divine grace of all, without generation, without recreating the spirit that's already within us. This is what in truth is meant by silence or wisdom or grace. So you can see the extracts are quite long, so that's why this will take some time to get through. So the next part is from the pre-existent church. For me, before I read this, the pre-existent church is not talking about the physical church. It is not referring to the church that humanity has created. It is not referring to the church of rabbis, priests, popes, and gurus. It is referring to the church of ourselves, the inner church, the church where we should dwell and target our worship, which is within us. Humanity has become accustomed to looking and seeking for what it seeks externally is actually within itself. The church that it goes to seek these answers are actually within yourself. And this is a difficult a notion for many to accept, that the church is within yourself. And we'll read this, and it will make itself clear to you what this is saying, that the church is actually within the self. This is the true pre-existent church. He revealed his inscrutable power for not only the Son, otherwise the Spirit, but the church exists from the beginning. So if the church exists from the beginning, it's the internal place of worship is actually the divine spark within, because that existed at the beginning. The Father is singular and was shown to be his own Father. So also the Son may be found to be his own brother. In other words, this is saying that the Son is the Spirit. It is our physical selves are attached to the Son, which is the Spirit, which could be, in other words, our own Father, our own brother. But also could mean the connectedness and that there is no separation from other forms of life, animate or inanimate, that exist within our physical experience. The ones who are without number and limit, and at the same time indivisible. Two people abundantly embrace one another in a good and insatiable thought. It is a single embrace, but consists of many kisses. What this means is the divine grace has expressed itself through a symbol and grace of manifestation, and its many kisses are manifested life. It's the divine life of all that exists, including ourselves. And when we say manifested life, this is everything, animate or inanimate, conscious or unconscious. Everything is really actually conscious. It's all forms of life. Even a blade of grass has a divine spark within it. Even a piece of dirt on the ground has a divine spark within it. There is nothing that is not divinely animated on this earth. And there is nothing that is not conscious of itself, whether it moves through its own volition or whether it does not, being animate or inanimate. Everything is of a divine spark. Everything has consciousness and awareness of itself. It is not just by virtue of us being able to think more expanded thought and the ability to express, because our avatar allows us to do so, makes us virtuous, that we are more divine than anything else. Everything is equally an expression of the divine. This is the church that consists of many people and exists before the eons and is justly called the eons of eons. Source itself is a church, external and internal. And so therefore the church is actually the divine church within ourselves, which is the place of the eons of eons, which is, in other words, all of life, all of manifested spirit, or manifested animated life or inanimated life. And the church is the all. The all exists within all of us. It exists from the beginning, as it states in the second chapter of sentence of this chapter. This is the nature of these holy imperishable spirits upon which the Son, the Spirit, rests. The church exists in the properties and qualities in which the Father and the Son, in other words the Spirit, exist, which is the inner space. It consists of innumerable births of eons. This is incarnation or reincarnation. Now, I have a video on reincarnation in my historical videos. If you want to scroll back, it'll explain what reincarnation is and why it exists. I won't go into it today. In turn, give birth in infinite number, i.e. manifest in bodies for experience. We give birth to ourselves in infinite number through incarnation and reincarnation. For this reason, no mind can conceive of them. Such is the perfection, for they are not rooted here below. It is the fullness of his fatherhood whereby his abundance becomes procreation, a creation of matter animated by spirit. So the fatherhood is our knowing and expression and reconnectedness with the divine. The abundance of procreation is our infinite existence, procreated within a body in which we experience physical life and choose to either fulfill our intention for those lives or choose to do not, either through direct action or misdirected action. The next part is from the all before it was brought forth. So this talks about before the cosmos was brought into being. Of the eons, i.e. infinite beings, us, in other words, of the eons existed eternally in the Father's thought. As we discussed before, eons, infinite spirit, divine spark, whatever you wish to refer our animated selves as, is expression of thought and intention from the divine. We are sparks of infinite energy called the Spirit, which is a transmutation of intention and thought, transmuting energy into a divine spark, which is pure divine energy. We are a fractal of the eternal all, which is our core spirit self. And he was like a thought and a place for them. Once it was decided that they should be born, he who possesses all power desired to take and bring what was incomplete out of those who are in him, a spring that is not diminished by the water flowing from it. As long as they remained in the Father's thought, while they were in the hidden depth, the all is a nothingness contained, all that can ever be, infinite stream of all possible manifestation. So I'm going to read that one again. As long as they remained in the Father's thought, while they were in the hidden depth, they existed with the Father but did not exist for themselves. A kind of existence they had was like that of a seed, an embryo. He had made them in the manner of the Word, which is a divine word, the Logos, before the things it will bring forth have yet to come into being. Eons as we bring forth from the nothing as a manifestation. So this paragraph, this extract from the book, the all before it was brought forth, is discussing that we are expressions of Spirit itself, and that we are not diminished by the water flowing from it. This means that Source is never an incomplete entity by expressing life from itself through thought and energy. And we drop into an infinite stream of possible manifestation, i.e. While they were in the hidden depth. The hidden depth is the infinite stream of possible manifestation, in other words, the universal theatre in which we experience life. We come from a place of absolute possibility, which is actually a place where whatever we wish to exist and whatever we wish to express, it looks like can exist depending on our expression and our idea of what it should be or what gives us comfort. It's actually a nothingness containing all that could ever be, and it's an infinite stream of possible manifestation. In its purest sense, that is actually what the source and divine grace is. It's a place, it's a state of presence, it's a frequency, it's a vibration, it's an essence of love and contentment and peace that is just a blankness of everything. An empty box that contains everything, in other words. It's a difficult thing to describe. They existed with the Father but did not exist for themselves. Kind of existence there was like an embryo. So this is, in other words, we were given life as a seed to express the divine whilst in form, but our purpose is not to remain an embryo. Is to evolve into what it was that from whence we came. When we are in physical form, and we drift through lifetimes in the universal theatre, be that in human form or otherwise, because we do have a choice. In what we express, it's free will here and above and below. But we soon lose our connection with our divine source, our grace, our beginning, and we start to become the bodies and the expression of the beings and the humanity, in this case, that we've dropped into, which is where the physical embryo aspect comes in, is where we're supposed to evolve beyond this physical embryonic expression of ourselves and reseed ourselves from within that in eternal church to grace itself. Okay, this is the Father's plan. This kind of expands upon what I've kind of already described in the previous slide. The Father had also thought in advance that they should exist not only for himself, but should exist for themselves as well as mental substance. I'll put forgetting in there. So this is effectively saying that we are also expressions of grace, but we're also uniqueness in ourselves. We're always pure expressions of grace. That never leaves. We're always pure expressions of the core of our foundation, which is the divine. But we do create a uniqueness the moment we drop into the realm of experience, of this universe or avatars. That's where we start having the mental substance and forgetting from whence we originate. In order that they might understand what kind of Father they have, the name of the Father he granted them, by means of a voice calling out to them that he who is by that name, and possessing it, one comes into being. So in other words, that voice is the inner spirit calling out constantly for us to recognize who he is, or the name from which we came, and what we possess within us that brings us into being. For as long as the infant is in the state of an embryo, meaning physical attachment, remember we discussed physical attachment, also embryos manifestation of divine thought, so there's two expressions of embryo. It has what it needs without ever having seen the one who sowed it. He did not close himself to them so that they should remain forever in his thought, but granted that they should come into being for themselves, allow them to understand the one who is, receive form in order to know the one who knows himself eternally. When one is born, one finds oneself in the light and is able to see one's parents. So what this is effectively saying is we should expand beyond our ego and intellectual narcissism cells, which is effectively our embryonic state within spirit. We have the mental substance which causes our forgetting or overlay. Once we're in physical form, we have the forces of the physical, be that conscious or subconscious, planned or otherwise, forces us to move away from our knowing from birth of the divine spark within. And the voice within us is asking us to express beyond our ego, our narcissisms, our image of self, and beyond this physical embryonic state, and understand the one who is, and that's a free will choice. We receive form. For me, that's a drop into ignorance, a manifestation, and we have to return to manifestation to our original state, which is grace itself. When one is born, one finds himself in light and is able to see one's parents. So when this means one is born, it doesn't mean our physical birth, it means our reconnection with our divine spirit. And once we do that, we find oneself in the light, which is knowledge, expansion, and we see one's parents, which is actually the divine all itself. We do not see but feel source. The divine is limitless emotion, not observation. This is true. We cannot describe the divine itself. It cannot be interpreted in words or text, really. We can only feel source. It's an emotional connection from within. You'll never ever see the divine grace because there is no form. You can only feel grace. That's the only way to connect to it, is through the feeling self. And then you'll have access to that limitless emotion, because it's not an observation, it's an observation from within of the emotion that you feel and the elation that you feel when you connect to the grace in its purest form, in its real form, and it will not come through the mind. Okay, the next part is the all is not made perfect from the beginning. For the Father produced the all like a child, a blossom from a vine. He withheld perfection for a time. This I disagree with. So I'm going to stop there. Not going to stop, but I'm going to stop there and explain. Perfection is never held back from us. Depends how you wish to interpret this. The Father produced the all like a child. The all is everything that exists, not just animate and inanimate beings, but it's the universe itself, which is governed by the same universal laws that we are individually governed by, that a blade of grass is governed by a small particle of dust is governed by. We are a blossom on a vine because there are many grapes on that vine, and the vineyards are endless. He withheld perfection for a time. What this really means is we withhold perfection for a time. Perfection we will never achieve in physical life, this is true. But the experience of being human pushes our connection to the divine into the depths of our being, and therefore it conceals it. And therefore that connection to the perfection, which is the all, is for a time withheld, but it's withheld by ourselves. I will say that, and you can ponder this on your own, but at birth we have completely unrestricted sight. We have unrestricted connectedness to the divine. We can see beyond all that the adult human eye can see. We can feel things. We know our connectedness and our golden thread and our open sight to the divine, our home from whence we just popped into life. We're aware of it, we know it, but we are not able to articulate this because we are a newborn baby. Our vessel has not developed enough for us to be able to, and our emotions and mental faculties are not developed enough for us to express it. That which we sense, that which we see, that which we know within ourselves as infants. But sadly, as we grow quickly in our early years, dogma of the human world and dogma of parents, dogma of our surroundings and environment starts once we are able to understand language and expression physically, verbally, or in otherwise, Our true knowing that we are given, that we have, that open sight that we have at birth, is suppressed, and a veil starts to appear. We start to create a thin veil around ourselves with our perceptions, and that grows thicker and thicker over time as we grow and as we move into the human world. And that's where perfection is withheld. It is up to us to remove that veil. We are challenged in our physical lives to remove that veil, because that veil did not exist at birth. It was a manifestation of being here. It's a manifestation of human life, which is what we always knew this would happen once we enter this life, because we come here with intention, with all the intention that that veil doesn't stay or remain, but for the majority, overwhelmingly, it remains and gets thicker and thicker and creates ultimate blindness. Not physical blindness, blindness to the divine. So that's what it means by withheld perfection for a time. The divine doesn't hold back anything. We ourselves create that blindness, and it's ourselves who withhold it, and it's for us to remove that veil. It was in order that the eons should not receive their perfection from the beginning, and thereby exalt themselves in the glory as equal to the Father, and think they achieved this perfection out of themselves. Interesting statement. Only our ego would state that we are equal to the divine. We are never equal to the divine. The divine is the all. We are, however, equal and fractals, complete mirror of the divine, in a fractal called our divine core spirit. But humanity itself awards itself the position of being better than the universe itself, as it tries to control and drive manifestation through its sciences. And this is happening quite a lot at the moment, I would say. So intellectual and technology have become the gods, and the passage to knowing for much of humanity. And the passage towards the divine, towards infinite knowing, has just been discarded and relegated to the depths of our being, where the infinite spark is no more than just a small flickering flame, when it should be a fully immersive glowing fire within us. He benevolently granted them perfect thought, i.e. intention, thought, energy, divine spark, animation. So we have the intention and the thought to reconnect to ourselves, to our energy, our divine spark, and then animate the spirit from within us. But we do have to take care of our body and our vessel to persist and allow purpose to unfold and fulfill. What this means is that we can go through life understanding our intention, and then suddenly come to that realization that we are divine infinite beings, reconnect with that church from within, make that dimly lit flame a fire, feed it, nourish it, bring it to the forefront, become that, and seek to achieve our intention in life. But remember, the body is our vessel. And we're also responsible for looking after the vessel to allow us to fulfill and unfold that rediscovered reconnection within ourselves. If we don't care for the body and the vessel, then the body and vessel will cease to function before we've achieved our intention. And this happens a lot in our world today. We ignore the body itself, which needs equal care and attention, purely for the fact that it needs to support life, so that we can unfold and fulfill the intention through which we came. Okay, this is from the Father reveals himself in the Son through the hymns of the mind. That which he now made to rise like a light for those who had gone forth from himself, the light being our infinite spirit, gone forth from himself, is that we are a divine spark. from source, or the divine grace. The full and faultless perfect one. He remained united with the one, i.e. our infinite spirit, according to the ability of each one to receive him. He exists only partially in the manner know about him, since they carry him and he carries them, in order that the Father may be glorified by each and every one and reveal himself. And being hidden and invisible in his ineffability, he is admired in the mind. So what this is effectively saying is that we again are encouraged to reconnect with the divine spirit, with ourselves. He exists only in the manner know about him, since they carry him and he carries them. So in other words, the divine source is within us, it carries us, therefore our spirit carries us, therefore the divine source is within us and glorified in each and every one and reveal himself. But one part I really wanted to go through in here was the full faultless perfect one. He remained united with the one according to the ability of each one to receive him. What this means is that this is not saying that there are those that we share this life with that are better than each one another, i.e. someone is more divinely blessed than another. What this is saying is according to the ability of each one to receive him. This is a free will choice. We all have the ability to reconnect with our internal selves, but we have to choose to reignite that ability. So for someone who chooses not to, for someone who chooses mind, he is a mind in the mind, then have a lesser ability to receive and reconnect with the divine grace that's within us. But those who choose to utilize mind as one of the Trinity of the spirit, heart and mind, and the mind being the processor, but the heart and the spirit being the primary path to knowing the divine, it will give them a much greater ability to receive him, i.e. the divine. That's what this is saying. It's not saying in its literal meaning. If we read it literally without any interpretation, it kind of could suggest that there are those with just born less ability than another. This is from the ability of eons, and I put in brackets us because we are eons, to procreate. And just as the marvels of silence are eternal births of mind, so also the faculties of the word, in other words the logos, are spiritual emissions, and thoughts are given birth by it, eternally living roots that have been manifested, spiritual births for the glory of the Father, who have issued from him, also bring forth all that they wish, which they think, that which they say, that which they move towards, for this is the power of giving birth as one from whom they have gone forth. This could mean many things. This could mean incarnation, reincarnation, but it also could mean manifestation from what we think. Every action, every word, every thought, every decision, every intention that we have creates and manifests whatever we decide to bring forth from all possibility, which is the universe itself. For this is their power of giving birth as one from whom they have gone forth, which is source itself. So this has multiple meanings. Eternally living roots that have been manifest, spiritual births for the glory of the Father, spiritual birth being ignited, or our divine spark. The Tripartite Tractate, the distinction between the Father and the Son. So the Son for me is the divine spirit itself. That is for me the Son. But also in the Nag Hammadi scriptures, he also talks of the Son as the first eon. So as we read this, you may get both interpretations depending on how you wish to interpret the text yourselves. The Father, insofar as he is elevated above, and this is not literal. We are source grace and also are not gods. We our own creator gods only. I put this in there in the bracket, in the squared brackets, are my own comments, by the way, not in the book. I wanted to make sure that I put this in here. The Father, insofar as he elevated above the members of the all, is unknowable and incomprehensible. There are many in the particularly New Age who says we are gods. And this sometimes can be misinterpreted. We are gods, but we are not source, the divine grace, the Godhead, but we are mirrors of the Godhead, and we are gods. And how are we gods? Well, we are only gods in that we are creator of our own reality. Excuse me, we are creator gods. And creator gods being you and I and all manifested life have the divine spark within us, and we have the ability through our, as it said in the previous couple of slides, through what we think, what we decide, what we say, what we do, we manifest our reality. So in that way, we are absolute gods and have governance over our reality, over our expression. So we are our own individual creator gods, but we are not the source and grace of all that is, the all, the isness, the divine. I wanted to make sure that that was understood. Had he revealed himself at once and suddenly, even the highest of eons that have gone forth from him would have perished. For this reason he withheld his power, extended himself and spread himself out. So what this means is that, like I said before, there is no withholding of power. When there's no, what I would call, that have gone forth from him would have perished. This is where I kind of detach away from the literal interpretation of the words themselves. I would say what we need to take away from this is that we are just expressions of grace, and we have all of the knowing and infiniteness and divine understanding of all that is within us. But can we express the full enormity of our divine existence, our divine isness, or the spark within us whilst in human form? For me, no, we can't. But we're not here to do that. The divine spark is a fractal, a copy of the all. It would be almost inconceivable to think that in this crudeness human form that we could express and be fully expressive of the entirety of the all. That just could not happen. And in that way, yes, we would perish, because this vessel could not contain and sustain the expression of an unrestricted, total, infinite, 100% expression of the divine grace. It just could not. This is not the vessel for it. That can only be expressed in the energetic form that we truly are. For that is infinite. That is the all. It exists in everything. It is in everywhere all of the time. It is imperishable. So if we interpret it this way, we can say, yeah, the full expression, if the grace and the divine suddenly revealed its entirety to us, then we would have perished. This is true, because the human vessel cannot and is not meant to express the grace of the all in its entirety. It's not possible to. We're here to move towards that grace in as far as we need to in human expression. Extend himself and spread himself out. It is he who gave a dwelling place to the all, in other words, the universal theatre itself of experience, through his constant suffering on their behalf. This is another part I detach from. Source does not suffer. The divine does not suffer. Grace does not suffer on anything or anyone's behalf, animate, inanimate, conscious or unconscious. It is humanity that suffers through its own volition and its own free will. And that suffering is through detachment. It's not physical suffering, although that is an expression of what happens. But that is from the detachment from our true I, which is the spirit itself. So the suffering isn't his constant suffering. This is not to be interpreted as source suffers. It's humanity, and we all are within source, so therefore we are all within the he, or the I, or the divine. So we could interpret this as saying the divine suffers because we are all within the divine. If we suffer through detachment from ourselves, then we could say that yes, he also suffers, or the divine suffers, but that is not actually accurate. The divine does not, because it's just pure love and grace. It is only ourselves that experience that, and all that experience obviously filters and is always part of the one, because we are expressing ourselves in the one at all times. Their minds the idea that they should seek what exceeds them. Yep, they should seek the spirit, perceive that he is, seek what he might be. They have understood who he is, and he is clothed. That means that we are rediscovering what we are, becoming what we are. We have understood our origins, and we have become clothed. That essentially means enlightened through knowing, expressing the knowing from within us. But every name is actually the infinite spirit. Every name is everything that exists. The name is a manifested expression of grace, which is animate or inanimate form. Anything that has consciousness of itself is a name. If we only want to refer that to the human form, then it's every human that exists, every spiritual being within human form, where it's actually everything. That is thought or spoken about him is brought forth in glorification as a trace of him according to his according to the capacity. The capacity, again, as I mentioned, is your free will to attach with the infinite grace within and express it. And as you do that, your capacity to know the unknowable and feel the divine grace extends outward. And also the capacity of the vessel. So the capacity of the vessel of the human form is within, on this planet, the highest avatar that exists, that allows us to have an almost unrestricted access to how we express ourselves mentally, emotional, physical, spiritual, theoretical, or energetic. We have multiple forms to express and to go within, and to go within the depths of ourselves, and also externally outside of ourselves, than say a blade of grass would have, an ant or a snake or another form on this planet. We have within ourselves, this body allows us, with our senses and our hidden senses, a far greater capacity to express and understand the infinite than forms that we would say, to use this term loosely, lower forms of avatar, or more limited avatars or vessels that have limited expression, or the ability to express themselves in a more limited state. Okay, the Son as the name and the names of the Father. He is all these names without falsehood. So he being the divine. All exists in the single one and is unified. As he clothes himself completely awake and in his single name, he is not divided as a body, nor is he split apart by the names, i.e. each spirit essence, which is us, in which he exists in the sense that this is one thing and that is. Rather, he is entirely himself forever, every one of the members of the all eternally at the same time. This is important sentence to pull out. He is the divine, he is the Son, which is the spirit, he is the youngest the youngest eon, maybe the first eon that is referred to in the Nag Hammadi scripts, but he is every one of the members of the all eternally at the same time. This is that we are all connected. There is no separation between us and anyone else. We are all the same. We are all connected beings. Every action, word, thought, and intention that we have makes a trickle in the universal ocean, infinite ocean of energy, and it affects what comes forward in future hours, days, months, years from now. He knows them, they are himself. When they speak, they are all in the single name. And if he brings them forth, it is in order that they be found to exist as individual qualities forming a unity. As we've just discussed, we all expressions of the single name being the divine. And when we found to exist as individual qualities, yes, we are expressions of the infinite itself in our core. But we then express individual qualities. We become uniqueness in our unique sameness, in other words. So we have, within our core, we are all the same because we are reflections of the divine. But we do retain the qualities and uniqueness that we form in our infinite existence of experience within the universe itself, which is where we come individually to experience, not only form, but also to challenge ourselves to return this universe back to the state in which it was formed, which was grace itself. And that's also within the unity of one, which we have struggled, as human beings, we struggle with becoming unified, not through one world government, by the way. This is unified within our souls, within our spirits, to understand that there is a one that has no religion, that has no form, that has no name, that has no avatar, that has no deities attached to it. It is just there. It is an isness that we need to connect to from within. And through that source, everything is the same. We are all unified oneness in that connection. Okay, this is the last one I'm going to do for the day because it's going over the hour now, almost an hour. So we'll leave this and then I'll carry on through another video and do part 1B. This is slide 13 of 26 slides so far, but there are actually going to be 35 in the end, so maybe 3 videos just to do the first part. So this is the eons procreate. This is, in other words, they incarnate, manifest other beings, other infinite sparks of beings. He did not, however, reveal his multiplicity at once to other members of the all, he being the divine, nor did he reveal his sameness to those who had issued forth from him. That is the eons of the eons, the human spirit. Emissions born of a procreative nature. Through their own procreative nature, to the glory of the Father, he makes the eons into roots and springs and fathers. So in other words, we are not only reincarnations of our own spirit incarnated over an infinite space, but we are also bringing forth roots and springs for other spirits to animate themselves within the physical realm. For that which they glorified they bore. Creation of spirit through the praise of the all, a procreative act. Procreation also means to give birth to the divine spirit within. So it's also a procreative act. It's not physical procreation. It's not just reincarnative procreation, but it's also procreative act to give birth to, recursively, the divine spark within, whilst we're in the universal theatre expressing and experiencing manifested form. For it possesses knowledge and wisdom. They have gone forth from the knowledge and the understanding of the all. From their assembled fullness they offered a glorification worthy of the Father, an image that was one and at the same time many, because it was brought forth for the glory of the one. Again, self-explanatory statement. For their assembled fullness they offered a glorification worthy of the Father, an image that was one and at the same time many. So again, we are many expressions of the one, which is the same, and therefore the glorification of the Father is effectively the procreative act of realizing the infinite spirit within us. And establishing that pre-existent church, which is our own internal church, to rediscover our divine origin and become one and unified, not just with the divine, but also unified with each other. It's important that we understand unification isn't just our individual unification with our divine spark, therefore becoming that spark, therefore becoming unified with what the spark is part of, which is the one, but also, whilst in physical form, being unified with each other. We are so separated from each other that we are not an image of the one and the many within our physical form. There are 7.x billion of us. We need to become a unified one, but at the same time the many, just as we are individually trying to become the one, but at the same time many, but trying to do that individually through our internal work. So there are many challenges before us, which this is trying to explain and trying to encourage us to move forward to. So I'm going to leave it there for now, because this is a very, very long chapter. It can get quite overwhelming. So I'll pick back up where I left off. Hello again. And do leave your comments. Let's see if there's any there. If there are any comments, do leave some comments if you'd like me to change the way I present any of this, or any explanations or any disagreements. I'm quite interested to hear them. Remember, these are my interpretations. Some of them do agree with the authors themselves, or the narration that's in the footnotes and the precursor summary chapters before the actual text themselves. The book is very good. And then we'll move on and do the next part 1b. Hopefully there'll only be a part 1b and not a part 1c, but we'll see how we go. I don't like to make these too long, and plus reading those out and explaining them gives me it gets me tired and gives me a dry mouth as well. So I need a break as well. So I look forward to speaking to you all again soon, and remember, become the practice in which you're going towards. Don't just make it something that you dip in and out of. Become that which it is that you're attaching to internally, and become that expression, because that is ultimately the intention for us all. And by doing that with your heart and your spirit and your mind as the Trinity, recursively and as much as you can in this lifetime, so that your future lifetimes are built upon what you've achieved in this one. There is no time, everything happens in the moment. But in human life, in physical expressions, we just look at time in a linear way. But it's important that you don't need to understand these texts in their pureness. You just need to take away what resonates with you. Because in the future, these things will mean different things to you. These texts will have different meanings to you as you move forward in your expansion. The point is to move and understand that the grace is here. Not outside, not externally, or found in a church, although a church is a place because it holds the energy of worship for many. It can help cultivate that from within you. But remember, the ultimate church will always be within you. And at the end, that is really where you'll be. Before incarnational life is no longer a purpose, or intention, or a need, or has any value. And that is actually where we're trying to get to. Okay, have a great rest of your day whenever you watch this, and I would say thank you so much for your time and for listening, and I'll catch you again soon. Thank you.